Well, last time we talked a lot about women, quite a bit, and I know you don't want to talk about it too much, but what better to continue the women discussion than to talk about Jordan Peterson again? That was it. Yeah, that was the shitpost intro I was gonna do. Yeah, because I'm sure you noticed recently because I saw you comment on it on
Yep.
Twitter. Was he what was it? His book released?
Yeah, 12 More Rules for Life, I think is the title.
Oh, an additional book. Okay, cool.
Um,
And for context, if people watch this later, if you saw the last episode, then you know that Jordan Peterson has some controversial opinions here and there, or at least opinions that people don't. Or I guess to categorize it better, that people, some people have issues with some of his opinions, myself included. But
yeah, I,
uh,
I think I think people have a good point sometimes.
I think they do too. But I think it's fair to. I think there's a lot of unfair criticism of him quite a bit, which is why I brought up this particular topic. Is that people use this as like a particular punching bag because he got like addicted to drugs because
Yeah.
his wife had like cancer, and so he like became addicted to drugs. It's like, like is that the punching bag we're really gonna use? Like,
So so um so I think the strongest argument I saw against him in the past day, just kind of looking at my replies on Twitter, um,
right?
I think the strongest argument I saw was that he was being alarmist about the impact of the law change in Canada.
I think that's fair,
I think that's
especially
fair.
because with hindsight, we can tell when like nothing's really came of it, or if it has, it's been pretty hush hush.
Yeah.
I feel like someone like him would have amplified that message because I mean you can't make the argument that Jordan Peterson doesn't have a platform to where he could amplify such a message if that were to happen.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
I think it's safe to assume it has not happened,
what do you
at
think
least not to
about
the extent of like getting arrested or anything.
what do you think about Jordan Peterson's argument that it's a slippery slope? Like if you're compelled to change this part of language, then there might be room for other changes that might be
Uh,
harmful.
yeah, I buy that argument quite a bit because I think that there's always people in life that are pretty what I would define as like prudish in
Yeah.
the sense that there's certain words that people don't like, and even I mean hell, even certain words I don't like. I don't like someone going around shouting the N word, for example, and it's a good parallel of a topic because a lot of times what this manifests into is hate laws,
Yeah.
which racial, gender, like sexism, whatever. Um, and to me, like I don't. I've always gone with two things. One, if you let them be more open about it, you know who the people are, so you can better choose who to associate with.
Hmm.
I would rather know who the sexist and the racists are. And two, I feel like also like it's really not much of my business
Hmm.
unless they're directly in charge of something like I don't know, if you're in charge of like a woman's shelter, right? For like abused women, and you're also being like super sexist, like okay, I can see that being a problem, right? Like employment wise, I can see that being a problem. But if you keep that stuff away from work and you're like a random Best Buy employee who's just like selling some random product that no one cares about,
Yeah.
I don't like if it doesn't affect your job, I don't really see much of a point of making a big deal about it because as much as we hate people being that way, like they also need to be able to eat. I think, and that's another thing too. I don't think it does it like it helps de-radicalize them by forcing them to the outskirts of society,
Hmm.
away from friends, away from family, away from being able to eat. Like nothing's gonna make you more vindictive than taking away like a person's ability to earn for themselves.
Yeah. Uh,
And maybe it's different. Like it's different. I guess you can make the argument for like bigger content creators, ones that like have their own brand.
mhm.
Like to bring back, say, a Jordan Peterson one. Like if he was being alarmist about transgender stuff, and I imagine you've probably seen some of the stuff he's talked about it. He kind
Yeah,
of he
yeah,
kind
I've
of
watched
dances
pretty much
around
most.
the topic a bit.
Yeah.
I have seen him before say that, like if he was like if a student asked him to call them that, right, he would be willing to do so.
Hmm.
Like I don't know, like it's kind of hard with him because he like dances around a lot of topics, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint an exact answer on a lot of them. Even with a case like that, like I guess you can make an argument of like a bigger creators like don't really lose their ability to provide for themselves.
So,
Even then, it's like, eh.
so there is a quote from him where he expressed willingness to use people's preferred pronouns
I think I've seen
personally.
that clip because it's a video, right? Like where he's said it.
Yeah. Because with the presence of that, I think I feel better about
Right.
his views on
Right.
well, that like makes me less confident in the idea that he would be transphobic himself. Um, I think I think one
Right.
aspect of it that troubles me is um just the fact that uh he talks about the Christian religion a lot, and kind of the language he uses around this topic kind of resembles the language that I see Christians use around the topic, which troubles
Yeah.
me a bit. Just just the way he phrases the topic. Uh,
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, you could make an argument on the other side, like you pointed out, alarmist.
yeah,
Whereas, because those two, the answer is always going to be somewhere in the middle of those type of things. Because I mean, one side is obviously clearly like at least to an extent alarmist, but the other side is the well, just like coal and canary mine or whatever it is, or canary in the coal mine.
yeah, yeah.
Piece of coal
Canary
in the
mind.
canary mine, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that killed me. Anyway, whatever. You guys know what I mean. Um, the canary in the coal mine type of situation, because a lot of people do push for power stuff when it comes to that. Um, and a lot of stuff we never have to worry about in terms of like speech because most people don't really care. So it's like no one's really gonna care to restrict it.
Yeah,
Like, I don't see a future of like, oh, I'm not allowed to call you a poopy head or something, like, because who cares? Like nobody
yeah,
takes that insult serious. Then like the problem is like even though say most of the society could probably agree like, hey, don't be yelling the N word to people.
hmm,
At the same time, it's like you do introduce the chance of because I mean he as Jordan Peterson was pointing out like chance of like government restriction, right? Like, do we really want people jailed for these type of things? Now, again, like it seems like with hindsight 2020, it seems like he was being pretty alarmist about it on this
yeah.
particular subject. But the actual concern itself is fairly valid in terms of like just in general, maybe not in that specific instance.
I think actions
Because
should definitely be policed, but I think words and thoughts and ideas, I would be worried about those being policed just because of the idea that government could become more authoritarian about
yeah,
stuff like that.
oh, I would agree 100%. And I think I pointed this out last time was that like actions a lot of times like it's tied up with certain like let's say like hate crimes. A lot of times it's tied up with their crimes anyway. So like it almost seems kind of redundant in a sense because to me, I feel like I made this analogy last time too, in the sense of like whether you stab me because of like because I'm white or stab me because I don't know ate pasta yesterday or something. Like
Hmm.
me like the difference is pretty like small. Not in terms of like how we would be able to deal with in society. Like obviously you need to know the root of causes to be able to deal with issues of society. But in terms of like like my own personal injury, like I'm still stabbed at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Like there's a difference, I guess, to something where it's accidental versus on purpose. Like I'll give you that.
yeah.
But like in terms of like what reason you did it on purpose, like I don't really see a
And I think there's
argument
a
for it.
I think if you have kind of two random people interacting on the street and that interaction is negative, I think the impact is different than, let's say, uh, uh, you're hiring someone and you discriminate against them because of their identity. I think there's
Yeah.
a large difference in the impact there. Um,
Right. Well, because one interaction, and that could leave you with like lasting emotional trauma, but then at the same time, like a lot of times, it depends on how negative the reaction. You know, it depends on a lot of factors. But in
mhm.
general, one interaction can usually be like brushed off a lot of times when it comes to certain things.
Yeah,
You know, at least I would say that out of most of your negative interactions ever, you probably brush off most of them.
yeah, yeah. But
Whereas like getting turned down for a job, like, you know, at a point, yeah, you need to eat. So it's like,
yeah,
and
and that's not to discount the idea of microaggressions, which I think is very real and very impactful. Uh,
I think, yeah, I would think. See, the problem is it depends on like what the person's intentions are too, and to an extent, like in terms of how you're feeling personally,
mhm,
like what the other person means doesn't really matter because you still are feeling your feelings.
mhm,
I think it should matter in terms of like how you cope with, like for example, like if I'm saying something like I think we probably heard, I don't know, I guess I shouldn't assume because I saw it on TV that you also would see it on TV. Have you seen the clip of like person calling like something like someone a hard worker and then someone complained about it because the hard worker was used negatively as a
hard
stereotype at one
worker.
point for um
Um,
from Latino Americans.
I have not heard of that news
So it's
thing.
like it was a while ago.
Oh, okay,
Like
okay.
probably like a couple years ago or something. It's just one of the ones that comes to my mind where it's like seems like obviously like this isn't the person's intention at all.
Yeah, it's
Or
unfortunate when
likewise,
when I hear the phrase hard worker, I immediately think of that stereotype. So it's
yeah,
yeah, it's a phrase that definitely is kind of
yeah,
associated with that now, I think.
can see that, but at the same time, I think it's important, like in terms of how you interact with people, in terms of like knowing like if that person isn't meaning it in that type of way.
Yeah,
Does it really count as a microaggression? I guess you can make the argument of like, hey, you know, here's some food for thought, maybe like different wording in the sense of because of whatever. But at the same time, I guess you can make the argument too of like of you know the idea of reclaiming something, right? In the sense of well, if you're using it in instances where it's not this,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
more positive instances of this thing that's not this, then you can make it to where this thing is no longer it's primarily associated with like whatever.
I think there's the question of whether or not the microaggression, if you want to call it that, is intentional or not intentional. I think
That makes a
there's
huge
a lot of
difference.
unintentional microaggressions that happen as a result of education or
Yeah.
generational gaps. Like there's a lot of stuff that grandparents probably say that's really cringy because of how racist it is, for example.
Oh, for sure, 100%. Yeah, I can think of a grandparent, for example, like any you know if there's like say like you know I don't know like Amazing Race or something, right? Like a TV show.
Yeah,
Like oh, there's always got to be the gay guy on there or whatever, right? That's
yeah,
like, geez, like they exist, man. Like I don't know what to tell you.
yeah. Sometimes
Like
I'm
it's just an
worried
accurate
that I'm that
accurate
person
reflection of
now.
reality.
Like whenever younger generations probably listen to me speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of the language, I mean, it's inevitably going to be like that.
Yeah,
Especially if hell, especially if transhumanism becomes more of a thing.
yeah,
Check out the first episode, by the way, plugging that. But but you know what I mean? It's going to be outdated, like you know, type of thing too, where it's like again, I can think of like grandparents of like talking about like, oh, you know, like your cousin got married to like a black person, right? But it'd be like a man of color. It's
mm.
like, can't you just say she got married? Like, you know, like fuck.
Yeah. Speaking of
Like it,
transhumanism, uh, Mudahar is very bullish on transhumanism according to his one of his recent
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah, did you see it was the
The Minecraft
Minecraft
mansion.
one. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I just finished watching that right before I joined in this. When I wake up, I have like good like 10, 15 videos I try to watch through on YouTube for my subscriptions, and yeah, that was one of them.
Yeah, it's funny. It was obviously like the video. The video was obviously a joke, but
Yeah.
I kind of would appreciate a future like that where VR is so
Yeah, well,
realistic that you could have your virtual mansion and not waste a
right.
bunch of resources.
I think it's a joke, but like a joke probably based on a bit of kernel of truth, which I mean, a lot of jokes are, not all of them, but a lot of
Yeah,
them are. So he probably, I imagine he probably would be down with that. He seems like one that's like, hell yeah, technology, woohoo.
yeah. He's definitely very knowledgeable about a bunch of different
Yeah.
topics: software engineering, cryptocurrency.
Right, yeah, a lot of that, like for example, say the dark web stuff he does. I
Yeah,
haven't looked into like a lot of it, but yeah, it's definitely changed my perception of what the dark web is in terms of, because I was definitely one of those that was like, oh no, it's the weird stuff where you know, the drugs and see the kitty porn and all that weird, like stay away from that place. Holy shit.
yeah. Yeah.
And
In general, I'm not too interested in the topic of dark web, so I usually skip those videos. Maybe in the
yeah,
future
well,
it'll
I
become more
skip most
relevant.
of the videos too because I'm not really like you. I'm not really super interested in it, but I'm just saying like it's changed my perspective on like what the area is in general. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And I don't
Uh,
know. He like I feel like he makes a good point too because it's like I've seen some of that crazy stuff on like say like Twitter or something, right?
mhm.
You'll get some random like I'll notice occasionally because some of the people I follow, they'll be like, "Hey, like report this account. Like this is posting like actual like pictures," and it's like, "Oh, okay, let's."
Yeah.
And thankfully, by the time like I don't think there's ever been one time by the time I've seen a post like that where I've clicked on the profile and like it's still been there.
Mhm.
So the mass flags, luckily worked pretty quick.
Um,
Like stuff like that. It's like that's crazy.
yeah. Sometimes I do think about um, like what kinds of things I would have to do in a future, in a dystopian future where the internet is heavily censored and there's an authoritarian government in control, and like what
Yeah,
possible ways could you have kind of an internet that's outside of the censorship somehow, like
right.
I don't know if at a certain point there will be a widely available internet that's kind of regulation free.
Like I'd be interested to know that.
Like
Yeah, that's kind of like the bigger like idea like censorship to bring back to that one we were talking about earlier is that the idea that a lot of times it gets turned against a political opponent type thing
mhm.
which becomes an issue like if you can't criticize like obviously like China's a pretty good example of that
Yeah,
and if you can't even like mention certain topics without like without having like issues that's a bit of a problem if I can't mention just Taiwan like
yeah,
that's oh
yeah,
by the way yeah Taiwan rights by the way fuck
yeah.
you China.
Taiwan number one. Yeah,
And,
yeah. China's an interesting topic. I'm kind of worried about. Uh, j- so I think China as an entity is very successful
oh for
economically,
sure
technologically,
right.
and there could be some arguments made that their government system is effective, but at the same time,
Well,
if
effective in controlling people, right?
yeah,
If money
like
making's, if you're running like a business, then yeah, if money making's your own like only metric, then yeah, definitely. In the same way that like say a company not paying money to get rid of pollution properly, but just dumping it in a river, like yeah, they're saving money on that endeavor, but that's
yeah,
long term that's fucking us.
yeah, and I think there could be some arguments made that you could have a good quality of life under that system, but at the end of the day, I feel like citizens under that system are basically pets, like they're kept on a leash. Uh,
Yeah,
they have certain constraints on how they can behave, especially with, uh, you know, I'm horribly misinformed as an outsider on the intricacies of day to day life, but the social
right.
system resembles the social system you would see in Black Mirror, for example,
Right. The
the
credit
social credit
thing.
system. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm worried just because of the economic growth of China that uh,
Right.
they as a government
Well,
they might have leverage to kind of keep
well,
encroaching
you
on
see
the rest
some
of
of
the world.
their you see some of that, pushback. Like I'm sure you remember the Blizzard thing.
Yeah,
The dude that mentioned that, and then he ended up getting suspended.
yeah.
Or the one you might not have seen was sure you've seen VTubers in general, like just the concept of VTubers, but there was
Hmm.
a one, I think it's called HoloLive, a Japanese company, and one of them was she was looking at her viewer metric, right?
Hmm.
Because YouTube is like it's a US based company, so it showed Taiwan as it, and I think she mentioned the word Taiwan
Hmm.
because it was in there. Like it wasn't like she wasn't doing like a pro like Taiwan, woohoo. It just like mentioned the word, and then it ended up getting not like a complete ban, but I think just like a suspension for a bit.
Yeah,
It's just like something as simple, like I don't know. To me, like I find that there's very few things. There's like a lot of things I'd be willing to compromise on, but like that's one of the few things I wouldn't be compromise on. Like something like that petty
hmm,
to me, like I don't know, just nuts. Like not being able to just like say something
yeah,
to
yeah,
get that type of reaction. If like that just drives me up the wall. Which is why I'm very much a pro like whatever words kind of guy.
yeah.
Freedom of speech, but like you know,
Uh,
um, even if they're like not great, because I don't like that alternative. And it's not to say that necessarily it would fall to that alternative. It's probably more likely it would fall somewhere in the middle,
mhm.
be closer to freedom. Um, and I mean that's the thing too. Like I think um, I don't know. Like there's certain ones like I can give up anyway that we already do. Like in terms of like if you're doing like threats, like just completely harassing someone over and over again.
Yeah,
But you can make an argument those fall under different things. That's why I'd be willing to like okay that's fine, but or it's fine to get rid of them type of thing.
mhm.
But
I,
like all in all, I usually don't though. Um,
yeah, I
yeah,
just
I kind of worry about China.
yeah, I just feel like there's kind of a constant struggle between like a tug of war between democracy and authoritarianism.
Yeah,
Um, and uh, I mean, we have a lot of existential threats coming up, like artificial superintelligence, climate change, you know, potential nuclear war. I think those are a lot
right.
of existential threats, and that's not including anything cosmic, like
An
I
asteroid coming in.
yeah,
Just,
um, like there's so many existential threats, and I think the idea of authoritarianism winning now that we're kind of a global economy and a global society, I think
yeah.
the authoritarian threat is even greater than it's ever been. And if that ever happens, then I don't know if we'd ever be able to rectify it.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's probably good that we have people from so many different like countries and stuff, right? In the sense of like so many different. Even though we try to unify them,
Yeah,
in a sense, like at the same time, like there's people that are very particular about their ways, and that's probably for the best.
yeah, yeah.
Keeps them in gridlock.
I'm starting to kind of appreciate the fact that that we've got like a lot of left leaning people in the United States, and we've got a lot of right leaning people in the United States. Because I think there are good ideas on either side, and just the fact that we don't have like a majority in either direction means that it buys us more time to kind of figure out these larger problems before authoritarianism kicks in from either end, like communism or fascism.
Right,
I think the
right.
fact that we're stuck in the middle for now gives us time to come up with technology to prevent uh, dystopia. I'm really
Yeah,
I'm really
definitely.
optimistic on technology solving problems in the future. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but
Well, I don't know. I think at the very least, I don't think any sort of thing like that's going to happen in our lifetime because we're going to get killed by a nuke. No, but yeah, if it ever goes completely to shit, I don't really
Um,
see. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon.
I tend
I
to
feel like it's more
disagree,
of
but I
a
could
gradual
also
thing.
be wrong. I think things are accelerating. Uh, like the velocity of change is just increasing every single year. Like 2020 has been pretty crazy so far.
Right, but to be fair, I mean, 2020 has been quite an anomaly.
That's true. That's true. But just like political division is uh, uh, a variable where we've seen huge change. Disruptive
Yeah.
technology, like we're getting so close to self-driving cars. We're making such huge advances in AI. Like there's so many different vectors that are accelerating. So I think the next 20 to 30 years will be very, very volatile, I guess. But that's my opinion. You could be right. We could kind of
But
plateau as
that's
far
just
as
a
our velocity
theory.
is. Yeah, a film theory.
Right. It's one of those where I would hope I'm right. Not because because I'm not.
Yeah, I hope you're right too.
Yeah, okay, you know what I'm talking about then.
Yeah,
But I don't know, maybe that's just me being optimistic. I mean,
yeah.
to be fair though, too, like at least in term like if you get them all under one roof, then yeah, I could see fascism like winning out, or authoritarianism, I guess we'll say, just in general.
Hmm.
But those type of systems don't really seem to last too long.
Yeah,
As
that's a good point.
like overall, seem pretty. Because I mean, they still need to use this as labor, and there's only so far you can push things in a certain direction before people like are like, no, fuck you.
What do you think about the possibility of a digital dictatorship, like uh,
Ooh,
AI,
it's interesting.
basically, uh, like not necessarily intentionally, like the AI is smart enough to where it's conscious and it's uh, 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 thinking through decisions like a human would, but to the point where AI is optimizing so many aspects of our lives that it's functionally equivalent to a dictatorship.
Uh, See, I don't. That's so hard to think of because it's like it's so far removed from like what our own reality's like.
Hmm.
Because I like it would have to depend on it. Would like a. Do you mean like almost like a Ready Player One type of a world? The sense
Um,
where most of the stuff's not like where like there'll be like a corporation rolling things through the online, or like just like AI specifically doing it.
eh, yeah, yeah, I could see. Well, I think that's a more plausible future where corporations are just so huge that their impact on our lives is far greater than government's impact.
Digital Mickey Mouse is
Yeah, like
coming in to
cyberpunk.
delete all your pirated copies of Aladdin or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Anyway,
where were we?
I don't know. I
Jordan
don't remember
Peterson.
now. Yeah, yeah, women, right? Something about
Women.
women. No, oh yeah, yeah. Jordan Peterson. Remember how that was supposed to be? How it started?
Yeah. So there are definitely some things to criticize about him. I'm not sure if it's worth demonizing him completely though.
No, no. And I think if anything, that even if you disagree with most or everything of what he says,
Hmm.
in terms of like trying to get people over to your side, like it's a poor decision. Like even if you don't agree with the person, it's a poor decision to go that hard against him. I would say
Yeah.
because I think everyone who was a friend or a family member or at least like maybe a classmate, coworker or whatever, has fallen on hard times. Maybe not necessarily drugs, but I mean, drugs is pretty common, like drug issues.
Yeah.
It could be, it could just be in general. Like I mean, people die, like obviously, so
Yeah.
just
Well,
death in general could be grief stricken.
well, the
But
drug addiction thing is kind of complicated. It's basically he was taking anti-anxiety meds that were prescribed, and then those had some
yeah,
sort of negative interaction with something in his physiology, and so he was like
Yeah,
in detox to kind of wean himself off of that.
he yeah, because he was taking something else to like fix that, right?
Yeah,
And then he
and
got
then in the
addicted to
middle,
that the other thing.
and then in the middle of that, he got COVID.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, the anxiety thing he was taking specifically because then his wife got cancer or whatever, right?
I believe so, but I think he just dealt with anxiety issues overall.
Well,
Something
yeah,
that,
I guess that too. He was kind of like jumping up in the limelight, so I guess that
yeah,
would be a fair anxiety producing type of situation, you know.
yeah, especially the fact that so many people think he's, literally Hitler. Uh,
Well, yeah, and I mean you could say on the other side too. So many people think he's almost literally Jesus at a point. Like there's quite
yeah,
a lot of followers of him that like take his stuff way more at gospel than they probably should.
yeah, and I kind of have, I think my personality type, I fall right into his target audience, so it's easy for me to kind of
You're
see
straight
that
white male. No, I'm
perspective.
just
No.
kidding.
No, no. I think the way I would define his target audience is people that are just kind of struggling with making progress in their life, and they want to make progress and do something great, but they can't quite figure out how. I think that's his target audience.
And you know what? It could be your target audience too because you're a brand new channel. Check it out in the description.
Yeah, basically,
And,
I'm the next Jordan Peterson. Invest in
do
transphobia.
you
No.
want to very briefly describe what I'm talking about so the audience has an idea?
Yeah, so I'm working on a new channel that's basically going to be like a autobiography of all the things that I'm trying to fix in my life, and I'm basically going to take the things that I learn and turn them into actionable videos with some advice. Uh,
Yeah. It's called
and
My Data Driven Life.
and if that wasn't niche enough, I'm going to niche down even further and focus on doing this in kind of a data driven way. So like defining metrics
Yeah.
of things I want to improve, and then trying to see if I can improve those month over month. Just because, engineer.
Yeah, well, I get to put that degree to use, right?
Yeah. Uh,
Have you know I make YouTube videos? Thank you.
but yeah, I think another criticism of Jordan Peterson is that his philosophy is basically based on Carl Jung, who I think is
Yeah.
not that his specific therapies are not that popular in the psychology community. Is that true?
Um. Okay, so yeah, I think we've talked about like this subject a bit before, but because I'm pretty sure I called him Jung last time because I've never actually heard
Yeah, yeah.
I had never actually heard it pronounced. Maybe that. But anyway, yeah, I mean his ideas, a lot of it is based on kind of more mythological type thing, like like ancestor, like unconscious. But the problem is like there's not really a reliable way to study the unconscious
Hmm.
like, definitively, right? So a lot of it's just based on inference and based off of like making connections, like historical stuff. It's very correlative, and that's a problem when it comes to scientific validity because correlation doesn't equal causation.
Hmm.
And the thing is, too, I mean, you can make a similar argument for say like a lot of stuff in evolutionary psychology, right? Like we try to figure out what it is by like knowing what we know now and then knowing what we know of people then, and we just try to connect the dots. But like, who'd say that we connected the dots properly?
Yeah.
Regardless, so that's the type of thing I have a problem with the Jungs though. Is like there'll be like a bunch of oh here's the like you'll take a bunch of archetypes, and a lot of this probably sounds familiar to maybe Jordan Peterson listeners.
Hmm.
In the sense of like because he goes off of archetypes quite a bit
Yeah.
in terms of in like story arcs. Like he's talked about a bunch of Disney movies and how they relate to this type of thing and how they relate to, say, the Bible, for example. And it's just a lot of it's just correlative, connecting the dots. That's not
So
to say he doesn't have like any sort of ability to his work. It's just that a lot of people, myself included, don't really take it much like
so
more like kind of like, oh yeah, that's an interesting theory, because it's definitely a theory.
mhm.
Um, in that, like, so the scientific way of a theory is like a more. It's not just like, because most people when they say like theory, they just mean hypothesis.
Mhm.
In the real world, they just mean like, I have an idea, I have a theory. It's like, no, theory is a much more evidence based explanation of like a particular phenomenon. So I mean, he definitely has like quite a thing fleshed out in terms of like like human development and stuff like that. It's just that it's hard to reproduce in terms of studies
um
without going like super kind of specific on certain ones. Like
yeah,
that'd
that
be
makes
like
sense.
obviously there's a sense of like one of his probably most famous is the idea of the persona,
Mhm.
the idea of like the mask that you put on, and that seems pretty accurate in terms of like day-to-day interactions. Like we present ourselves differently in different social situations. You know.
So a lot of what I don't know specifically about Jung's philosophies, but I think I base most of mine on Jordan Peterson. So, like all the stuff that Jordan Peterson says makes intuitive sense to me, but it some of it is stuff that's not necessarily backed by actual science.
And that's another thing. Like at least I specifically have a problem with, and a lot of it is that there's a lot of things that we're not considering all the variables of something.
Hmm.
Something can seem like it makes intuitive sense, but it's because we're not paying attention to like an extra variable. For example, like it would make intuitive sense that the sun orbits around us if you just base it on the fact of where the sun's position is relative to us.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
That's why a lot of people would have believed way back when that the sun orbits around us rather than the opposite thing, which is true, that we orbit around the sun.
Hmm.
I feel like I use that example usually because it's one that we obviously know is bullshit, and but also like I can make a pretty easy argument as to why that would make sense. Just focusing on like our own view of things. So the point of that being, that's why I don't like a lot of the correlative stuff. I feel like there's a lot of variables we don't know when it comes to things.
Hmm.
So it could be easily it's called a third variable thing
Okay, yeah.
in the sense of like A cause well, if A goes up and B goes up, then A must cause B or B must have caused A or whatever, right? It's like no, it could be a third thing that's affecting both these things.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like similar in that regard.
So the
But
idea of the shadow, is that something that
that's
falls
Jung.
in that category?
It's definitely Jung.
Does
Um,
that fall into the third variable category where it's
well,
not?
so okay, so are you going off of how would you describe shadow specifically with what you're thinking of?
Um, Based on what I understand from the lectures, the shadow is basically uh, you have the potential to do evil, but uh, based on your values, you can basically kind of tread a fine line between being evil and just using that potential to affect change.
All right. So from what I'm aware, it's the because there's two different. I don't have the actual the diagram in front of me, but from what I remember, there's like two different. It's almost like the id, the ego, and the super ego, but like
Hmm.
it's the difference of like the shadow, the ego, and like it's the self or something. But it's almost like
Um,
that kind of similar thing where it's like the unconscious, and then yourself, and like somewhere you're somewhere in the middle, trying to you're being pulled by these two different things.
okay.
So, I mean, that would make sense in the sense of like shadows, following you around, right? In the
Mm.
sense of the unconscious, it's just there. Um, yeah, again, I mean, it kind of just runs into the problem that like it's really fucking difficult to study the unconscious.
Mhm.
Like it's not there. Like because you can pull some stuff up obviously from the unconscious. Quite a bit of therapy works on doing that type of thing in the sense of like pulling up maybe repressed memories, for example, right? That's clearly in the like, unconscious. In terms of like studying that type, like a specific thing, like oh yeah, it must be this. Like that's like it takes a lot of effort to do that type of thing. It takes a very specific way to set up your study, and to me, like I don't know, because even then, like a lot of studies, you can probably find like an issue with every single study ever
Yeah.
in terms of like oh, maybe like, did you think about like this variable? Like at a certain point, you can't think of every single variable ever.
Mhm.
You can't think of like maybe some simple ones you can, but like you're talking about stuff this complex, like there's only so much we can do because each person's different too. So it's like you can't just make clones of everyone and test it like in exactly the same type of whatever. But,
So, do you think there's any value in thinking about these types of ideas in a philosophical sense, or do you think these have the potential to be harmful?
um, well, I think both. I think there could be use in it. But I do think it could be harmful if you kind of sit around. I mean, because there's definitely a. I got my throat's all fucked. Um, there is value, I would say, in thinking of the ideas, because, like, for example, like I bring back the persona as being like probably the most, because it's just the most famous
Mhm.
one he has, and it's probably the one that seems like it's the most, yeah, we do it type of thing. Um, it could be useful in knowing like generally how people can behave, but at the same time, like it doesn't. I wouldn't take it too much to heart. I guess is probably the best way to
Okay.
put it.
Okay.
In the sense that like it wouldn't like because it's not like pre determined type thing, right? Because you can still affect things quite a bit.
Mhm.
It's like the idea of like say an unconscious like it's almost like the same thing as say like biology, right? Yeah, there's constraints based on say maybe this unconscious or whatever, right? But like you can do so much more than that in the world, what we have available to us.
So you could think of it maybe as more of a soft constraint, like there's some
Yeah,
mobility outside of your persona.
I would think that, and I would also think that because it's harder to pinpoint down something like that than is to pinpoint down something like say biology. Like
Hmm.
it's pretty obvious. Like it's much easier to look at the cellular structure of like your toe or something than it would be to what specifically is in your unconscious that you can't think of but is there type of thing.
Yeah,
Um, I guess take it with a grain of salt would probably be my best.
I think. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think
Like it
the thing that I
is interesting
struggle
too.
the thing that I struggle with the most is I think um, there are parts of my personality that I want to change, but the
Yeah.
more I try to change things, the more I realize that I'm mostly, for the most part, I'm the same person I was, 10 years ago, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just so hard to change certain aspects of myself. I
But,
think I think the fact that I'm in that situation is what draws me to stuff like Jordan Peterson's lectures.
yeah, I could see that because in the sense of like I feel like in the sense of like oh I feel like what I'm doing isn't really like changing much and then he comes in with a like if you just make small changes here and there like it can lead up to bigger changes type of thing,
Yeah.
which is I mean I think there's some validity to that for sure
Yeah, I think there's
in
truth
general
there.
sense.
The compound effect is
Right.
probably somewhat related to that. Like if you it
I would say that definitely would work. I would say that even just like if you're finishing smaller tasks, you're getting that sense of accomplishment
mhm.
sooner, right? Because it's like, oh, I've done this, right? It's kind of the thing of like, oh, hey, the rough draft for my paper's done, right? It's like, oh, wow, and then now that's done. Well, now the whole paper's a lot easier.
Do you
Or
think
like I did the framework of it, before I did the first draft. So now the first draft's gonna be easier. Now, builds off each other.
are are you aware of any like Jordan Peterson equivalent figure like that's alive right now and active on, let's say, YouTube, that might be a better guide for trying to make these sorts of life changes?
Um, if there is, I don't know about it because I mean I'll be honest. I usually don't really look at self-help stuff too much.
Yeah.
I'm pretty pretty confident about who I am as a person.
Yeah.
In the sense of like
Lucky.
obviously like I'm not arrogant, but
Yeah.
yeah, lucky. I don't know, like I don't know, maybe it's like lower standards or something. I don't know, but like I've always just been kind of like content
Mhm.
with life, I guess. And yeah, I've never like obviously I've had moments of self doubt, but like if I sit here, like when's the last time I actually felt like genuinely sad about something? I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
I can think of like plenty of moments of anger because of like, or more so annoyance, and then some moments of anger. But like that's more so related to like trying to do something like maybe in a video game or trying to do something online. You know, like technology's not working, or like family member comes in and bugs me about something stupid,
Yeah.
or like someone's kicking my ass in a video. Like I can't figure out how to sign up for something, whatever, right? Like obviously all life's little annoyances. Like sometimes that stuff can get me really really annoyed, to the point where I'd say angry. But in terms of like self doubt, like I've never really had that too much.
Yeah.
It's not to the extent where like, because I don't know, like to me, like I set out a very like rough path, like in like rough like framework, not like
Mhm.
rough as in like difficult, but like rough as in like the framework, like a loose, I guess is probably the better word to use. Loose framework of like, oh, here's what I'm gonna do, and so far, I don't know. So far, it seems like it's worked out for me. Bachelor's in the subject that I wanted to study.
Yeah.
I'm kind of dragging my feet about like going further with it, but I don't know.
I don't think I'm necessarily sad, but I think the existence of mortality kind of drives me to uh, get as far as I think I can in the life that I have.
That's
And
fair.
so I guess I'm chasing the fountain of youth like people were centuries ago, uh, and just trying to see how much impact I can have. I
Uh, what is the what's the phrase? Tom Petty with "You know how it feels to be me." That old man was born to rock. He's still trying to beat the clock.
uh,
Sorry, I
yeah.
probably just completely cut into what you were talking
No, no,
about.
no, 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 no. That was very poetic.
No, I
Yeah,
understand that the desire though to live a life to the fullest potential. Um, some people probably feel it stronger than others.
yeah. Like
Uh,
I wanna upload my brain to a spaceship and go to another, like fly to another galaxy and mine, mine a
and
planet for
diamonds.
resources and create a simulation of a universe. Like those are things I want to do, but where our lifetime is so short, the chances of that happening are infinitesimal.
Yeah, I think that's probably why I don't feel it too much. Because like to me, like 100%, like I'd be down with that, especially like if any sort of like extend life.
Yeah.
I've even looked into like because there's a company that does cryogenic freezing, but I was like, I don't know, like kind of seems like it kind of seems shady at best.
um.
But like so I've definitely looked into this, like some of that stuff. Maybe not like super hardcore, but I've looked into it enough because I'm also the like, oh no, like I'd rather not like give up the short time that we have.
I think we're converging on the first episode again now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, we talked about that's fair. It's random ramblings, man. You ramble
Yeah.
about whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just repeat the same like 2 3 episodes for the next like 15.
Yeah.
Um,
is there a different school of thought that's kind of in antithesis to Carl Jung's school of thought that it
um,
might be interesting to look into?
oh, there would be. What is the name of it though? There definitely is because I remember. You know what I could do actually? I could go look up my because I definitely what I have. One of the classes I took was like modern history of psychology,
Mhm.
and it goes through like the whole gambit of like the last 300 or so years of like psychological theoretical development type thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's definitely some that like actually that is to go over the very brief of it. that is actually what most of psychology was in terms of how it developed. Unlike, say, like biology or something, right, where like it has like one unified field. Like if you look at this psychology, it has like 50 different fields.
Yeah.
50 plus different fields when you look at, say, the APA, like what type of specific ones. A lot of psychology will be like one field pops up off the back of another, saying like, "Hey, actually, you're doing it wrong." Yeah, that's quite a bit of it. Like, say you take a like, there's some that like more of a biological sense where they just believe that unconscious has like almost like no effect type of thing, right? And it's all like behavioralism actually is probably more kind of what you're looking at. In that it's pretty much just behavior response, like a almost like a Pavlov type thing.
Yeah.
You know, with the dogs in the book, similar to that. Like not exactly, but like kind of similar to that, because a lot of that type of stuff. Like there's a lot of similarities between some of them, and then there's a lot of stark contrasts.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
let me grab if you want to keep the conversation going, let me grab this damn book.
Yeah, it's
Cause
starting to sound like it overlaps a lot with kind of the theoretical aspect of computer science. Like, there's different ways to approach a problem. There's different pathfinding algorithms. Like,
yeah.
like if you're like, let's say you're programming a bot for a video game. Um, there's different approaches to how you want the bot to find the shortest path from where it is to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And then each one of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. So I guess that's kind of analogous to, it might be a bit of a stretch, but it's kind of analogous to like different schools of thought trying to guide how you approach your life in different ways.
Yeah. I could say that. At least I could see some of the similarities in that. Yeah, sure. Keep going here. I'm still reading.
I would,
Trying to find the exact one.
yeah, I would really love a future where people don't have to have jobs in the traditional sense anymore, like uh like we do now, where someone works at McDonald's, someone's a programmer, a truck driver. Like, all these are jobs that will probably eventually be replaced. I think an ideal
Yeah.
state would be where everyone can just pursue stuff that's ultimately the most important to us. Like, I think art is probably a big one, and philosophy. Like, just thinking about this stuff, I'm just thinking, oh, maybe I would have been way happier if I just pursued a philosophy degree. Obviously, it wouldn't have paid the bills as well.
Yeah.
But
What's the
but
problem, right?
these,
A lot of the artistic stuff doesn't end up paying super duper well.
yeah,
Because it's less, more variability in terms of what you can do with it.
yeah,
There's not as much of a guarantee, so the pay isn't going to be as much of a guarantee,
yeah. I would
which is a
I would
shame. But
I wouldn't mind
yeah,
a digital dictatorship if like we were able to pursue all this stuff if we wanted to. Like, if
yeah,
AI controlled everything and then we were left to just think about stuff and do art
yeah.
in
Oh man, are you sure you wouldn't want to be rooting for the blue team killing the red team in terms of AI battles?
China.
AI war? No, I don't even mean China. I just mean general AI wars. Just
Yeah, I
like
don't know.
random, like, I mean, we're kind of almost like we're kind of halfway there. Like, we
Yeah,
already have like drones and stuff. Like
maybe
push a
China
button and all of
does
a
have
sudden
it
have drone
right.
strike.
I don't know. I actually
Uh,
I actually invest in some Chinese index funds and some Chinese companies. Like,
ooh,
just in case,
recording
just
everything I'm
to,
saying, and you're
just
gonna
to,
send it back to Z
yeah, we'll
Jinping or
cut
whatever
this
the hell his
we'll
name
cut
is.
this part out. But no, I'm just kind of diversifying my portfolio a little bit more, just because of how big of a superpower they are, and probably will continue to be. Like, I think eventually it's just going to be, the US economy and the Chinese economy, like two big superpowers.
for a bit, I think so. Did you see that? Did you see that report that pretty much like China had pretty much stopped trading with North Korea almost entirely?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it was only like what was it in the last month or so? Assuming that this report's accurate, I don't know. There's a dude I follow on Twitter who has a PhD. Like, so let me pull him up. I can send you a link to him. He talks about the relationship between Japan and North Korea quite a bit, and obviously China is a big part of like relationship between China and North Korea, right?
Yeah.
And Japan, like it's all part of it. Similar. But there he is, Oliver Gia, a Kyoto-based researcher on Japan DPRK relations. Right. So anyway, he like one of the things he had ended up posting was that it was somewhere in like the like double digits of like the amount of trade between the two countries within the last month or so. And like it had continued to drop.
Huh.
Oh yeah, here it is right here. Assuming that this is North Korean news, or NK News is what it's called. North Korea's trade with China is dangerously approaching zero. A mere 13 items crossed over the border in October, and only 4 items were exported to the DPRK. That's the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. That's the name for that. So yeah, so like, and I do remember like about like a year or two ago, when the whole Trump Korea thing was happening. I do remember China kind of backing off for a while, and it seems like they might have kept that up in terms of backing off, of kind of like distancing themselves type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because North Korea kept getting more
Nuclear.
resistance from the no, well, I
Oh,
mean that too, but like in the sense of like they kept getting more resistance from like the community at large, like in terms of the other countries.
yeah.
It's kind of like the ooh, you don't want to associate yourself with that guy. And it's like kind of backing off, like that guy, I barely know that guy. So that might have been something to do with that. I don't know, but obviously it does keep going less and less, so that's kind of interesting.
I wonder if this is a bit of a tangent here, but I wonder. So let's talk about things that Trump potentially did well. I wonder if his North Korea response was, historically speaking, when we
Yeah.
look back, if it was a good response or a bad response. I think
It's interesting. I don't.
things were kind
It
of
seems like
mobilizing around the time of the transfer from Obama uh, to
okay.
Trump.
It might have. If nothing else, it might have slowed down the process because it seems like kind of relationships were falling apart between them now.
Yeah.
Like at this point, even though they were kind of patching things up for a while. Obviously, the North Korean and the South Korean, I don't know what they're ministers or something, prime ministers. Is that what they are?
Mm-hmm.
Were they did a photo shoot together or whatever, right? And then he had the North Korean dude had the Sun Moon or whatever his name is. Like, I'm sure that someone that's more versed in the politics probably hates us right now because I'm using their real like their actual name. But like had the dude pull him over to the other side of the border or whatever, right? So they're standing together.
Yeah.
Like that seemed like a big deal, and I'd say it was, but it seems like kind of more they're going back towards where they were. I don't know if it's really made a lasting impression so much, but like if anything else, it kind of seems like it kind of an attempt, right? I think there's something to be said about trying to call somebody's bluff,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of like, because I mean, as much as they are like, a bunch of violent, crazy fucks in terms of the government there, not the people, just the government there.
Yeah.
Um, they can't take on the U.S. military like at all. They'd get wiped off the face of the planet if they even tried.
Well, do you think they would like they had the potential to probably start off mutually assured destruction, right?
Yeah, they had the potential to do that, but the problem is that there's no scenario. I even said this back at the time, like I'm sure on my Twitter account or something, right? Like in the sense of like, I mean, they could do something like that, but like there's no scenario where they win.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe like China could. There's plenty of scenarios where China could win, but North Korea doesn't win.
So, where does North Korea get
So
imports from anywhere else? I think I remember seeing the United States actually sends supplies there for relief for the citizens, at least.
Let's take a
North
look.
Korea imports. Top imports of North Korea are soybean oil, synthetic filament yarn, woven fabric, nitrogenous fertilizers, wheat flours, and light rubberized knitted fabric. That sounds
Trade
pretty
partners. Where's
reasonable.
trade partners? Okay. Uh, they export mostly to China. I guess they don't get much imports. Imports mostly from China, Russia, India, Brazil, and Switzerland. Switzerland. What the hell's
Did
Switzerland?
you ever
Man?
see that screenshot of Steam user base by country, and then there was one Steam account in North Korea? I don't know if that was real or not.
Oh, I think I remember like vaguely seeing something like that on my timeline at one point. The idea was like it was like the North Korean leader was playing some like Steam game or something. That'd be funny though. We do know he likes the NBA, right? Like, wasn't that one of the things?
Yeah, I mean they sent over what's his face?
Dude, okay, so here's the question: would you like if you were some sort of star athlete or something, right, or like a movie star or something, right? Would you go over to North Korea if the dude wanted to see you? I don't think I would.
Uh, I think I would have a moral objection to how the citizens there are treated, so I think that would weigh heavily on my decision. I don't think I could see a scenario where I could go and be amicable with
Like, right?
the leader. Uh,
Right, and to me, like he seems like the type of leader that like if you're not amicable, like it's probably not
yeah,
best to go in the first place.
yeah,
But
because you
maybe
probably
that's
get
just me.
trapped or something or killed. Yeah. Yeah, we're making a lot of countries
Yeah.
mad with this podcast.
Right. Well, only the dumb ones.
Whoa, whoa.
No, I've always no, but like to be serious though, I've always stood by the point of like governments in general
Hmm.
are usually pretty shit. Some worse than others, but like in general, especially the bigger players, right? The bigger the players are, usually the more shit they are. Just in the sense of like they have more of the ability to mess around with people.
I wonder if,
Obviously, like our country, like is no saint at all.
yeah, I wonder if it would be worthwhile moving to a Nordic country because they seem to be pretty okay, right?
Yeah, in general, yeah, it seemed to be. Obviously, like I haven't looked too much into it in terms of like moving there or anything, right? So I wouldn't 100% know, but they seem like they're right.
I know my long-term strategy is to move to Canada, just because 100 years from now, U.S. will be a wasteland from climate change, probably. I feel like there's going to be a mass
Uh,
migration to Canada and Russia and Australia,
like it's one of those
probably.
things. I hope Biden actually does something in terms of climate change. I don't think he will. I think he'll just join the Paris Accord thing again, and then like nothing is really gonna happen.
Hmm. You think
But
we'll actually like reverse climate change in time? Like come up with disruptive tech to greatly reduce
uh,
the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere?
okay, so here's the problem with that. Like in terms of, is it possible to do that? I think it's possible. Are we going to? No, no, not at all. I think our corporations are gonna completely fuck the earth past like nothing until it's way too late.
So you think
I
we'll
mean,
probably see the worst of what we're predicting for climate change, and that there won't be a mass migration?
no, well, no, I would think there's going to be a mass migration eventually. I don't know if I necessarily think in the next, what was it, in the next like 20
100 years.
years or 50
Oh
years or
yeah,
whatever it
yeah,
is.
no.
Like I don't like I wouldn't believe necessarily those ones.
Well, what about next 100 years?
Potentially, yeah. Because I don't know, I just think that the like companies just can keep dragging their feet until like it's way too late.
Yeah.
Like I don't see a scenario where they don't, at least in terms of like, because even if one company doesn't, like, it's because that's the point of a company, is just to make profit. Like that's its first and foremost goal,
Do you think we
especially like the
could
bigger ones.
Do you
So
think we
I
could
don't.
turn
So,
things around if the world produced just one or two more people with the same impact as Elon Musk?
hmm. Huh.
Like,
Maybe.
just think of
I
the
mean,
impact of that one person
I
on
would think it's
so many
possible.
industries.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as long as hopefully they weren't as
Me on Twitter.
well, no, I don't even mean me. I kind of mean more like egotistical. But
Oh yeah. Well,
I
if
mean, memes
anyone
are
has a
fine,
right
but
to be, I
memes
think
are the
it's
only thing
him.
that. Yeah, I mean, but then there was that one thing of like he tried to like he was talking about building a submarine like to
Oh
save kids, and yeah, the whole like calling a dude a pedophile thing, like that was a little much.
yeah.
He got all mad because the dude didn't want to use his like submarine or something.
I mean, I've definitely gotten into arguments where, looking back, I was definitely in the wrong. Uh, I think that's just proof that he's human. You know, the fact that he like
Yeah.
I've gone back and forth on my opinion on Elon Musk so many times. Like, oh, he's the greatest, and oh, I hate him. He's, you know. Now I'm leaning
Whatever,
more
man.
towards, huh?
Whatever, you sheep. You just listen to whatever the media tells you in the given moment. You don't have real opinions.
Well, that just goes back to my belief that things will be incredibly volatile over the next few decades, and because of that, we need huge impact people like Elon Musk to have any chance of coming out on on a good side after all the volatility.
Yeah.
But you know, that's my layperson's opinion on the future. So, and it's all speculative. So,
Well, you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20.
hey, that's this year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because we're saying things in 2020. The hindsight will be from our views in 2020.
Did you ever
Or
find the psychology textbook thing or whatever you were looking for?
oh yeah, you know it's funny. Yeah, I was pulling a couple of these up when we were talking, and I completely forgot to click back on it.
Oh,
Okay, yeah. So there was like I said before, there was a behaviorism, which
behaviorism.
is not behavioral, it's behaviorism.
Behaviorism.
That's probably kind of more like that's pretty much like just conditioning, pretty much.
Okay.
Um, and that was a big thing for a few decades in the U.S. Like that was one of our big things. One of the other ones, it probably was more along the lines of like more the start of like there's a thing called structuralism, and the idea is that this is where say introspection like first became like a huge thing in psychology.
Okay.
We still use that now,
hmm
where we've refined it obviously since then. But that's kind of where like the first like big like thing came from that.
So
And the
base.
idea on
Yeah. Go
that one
ahead.
was more yeah, the idea on that one was basically the idea is that you try to get the whole sum of all your experiences
hmm
rather than breaking them down. And there was one like right after that too, where it was the opposite idea, where it's actually we got to break them down into each little thing. So that's the type, that's the type of thing you deal with in psychology in terms of the history. Is like, actually, you're completely wrong, like 100%. Here's how you actually do.
So let me
You know,
try to define behaviorism based on my quick skim through Wikipedia, uh,
yeah.
and then see how correct that is. So behaviorism basically um, embodies just the idea of the fact that you can reinforce patterns or behaviors through repetition, and you can use that to improve areas of your life. Is that am I in the right ballpark there?
Oh, you okay? So you're asking in terms of like how does that particular thing relate in terms of like what you're doing with your data-driven life thing? Is that what you're doing?
In general, yeah, but like,
Okay.
what are the practical applications of it?
Practical. Yeah, yeah. Yes, that'd probably be. Yeah, because a lot of time, I try to think more like theoretical than necessarily practical. But yeah, yeah, that would probably be the practical in the sense of like because you can because behaviors are learned, through the environment,
Mhm.
changing the environment to work with the behavior.
I see.
Uh,
Okay.
but it's, I mean, the actual obviously because this is from like the 1900s, so like it's a lot more restrictive in terms of like it doesn't account for like variability that humans have, especially because least of all, we don't know all the like little things that affect us, right? Like we don't know how air being 1 degree hotter affects my thought process during like taking a math quiz on a Sunday night, you know, like whatever, right? You know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
so many variables when it comes to every little individual thing.
Yep.
There's only so much these things can get, but that, I mean that's generally it's pretty much just like Pavlov dog, do that, fix your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, with like more of a human like element to it, where it's a little bit more complex.
So Pavlov was a pretty terrible person, even though his uh, experiments were really useful for
Question:
psychology, right?
a person from the past being terrible? What? No, that couldn't be possible.
Like he literally like extracted organs and stuff from dogs, and it led to the death of a lot of dogs.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me at all. I can't say. Some of the books I went into kind of went into the backstory of a couple of the people. I don't know if any of them really went to Pavlov specifically, because Pavlov wasn't he wasn't a psychologist,
Hmm.
at least not in that sense, right? He was more working with animals. Um, so I don't
Yeah,
know, like I wouldn't consider him the same type of psychologist.
and he basically monetized stuff that he extracted from the dogs to fuel his research. I'm kind of simplifying here. I don't want to be
Yeah.
too specific, but yeah.
Uh, well, I mean, dude, psychology is built off of like a foundation of like terrible thing. Like, have you seen the what is it the
just like how United States is built off of slavery
yeah.
and racism.
Well, yeah, what do you mean there? George Washington owned slaves? That's terrible. You see the is it the Milgram experiment? Have you seen that before? The
Mil
one with the shocking one?
Milgram?
Milgram, Milgram, the one where it's
Milgram.
like it's fake shocking. See like how far a person can be pushed.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, so like that's the type of thing, right? Like we have so many that are like that, where it's like some of the most famous experiments are just like these people are terrible. Or like the have you heard of the Stanford? I think it's Stanford prison experiment.
Yep.
Yeah. So you know, it's just like stuff like that where it's like a lot of. I mean, if you look at someone like probably the most famous psychologist, who would you think is the most famous psychologist
Freud?
in general? Yeah, exactly. Freud's quite a card. I'll tell you what. Pretty. People are pretty sure he was addicted to cocaine for quite a bit. And actually a lot of a lot of his stuff, like he would do. First of all, a lot of it was qualitative in the sense that it was focusing on single people, so it's hard
Mhm.
to drag that out to multiple. You know, he was doing the like therapy, like he was like pretty much main dude to get therapy started in terms of like how we consider it now.
And he was friends
It's
with
like
Carl Jung. There's the problem, right?
yeah,
No,
right.
no.
That's the real problem. No, but you know, so like there was that problem, and then there's a problem of the fact that like he was writing down stuff about his patients after the fact.
Yeah.
So that runs into many problems in terms of like, first of all, assuming he's not completely lying about certain things. That
Mhm.
runs into problems of like memory in terms of
Yeah.
like, are you remembering things differently?
Huh.
So a lot of his stuff, it's a good chunk of his stuff is kind of difficult to go off of in terms of like, you know, like this is valid like science.
Okay.
No, but that's not to say like he actually has quite a bit of valid science behind this stuff. Like like obviously some of the, like there's the funny joke of haha, you know, you want to have sex with your mother.
Yeah.
Or, like some of that stuff is not, but there's definitely how children develop. Like he actually did quite a bit with that, and it makes sense because he worked. What is it? Was it his daughter or something? There's someone that was like they were working with children like for quite a bit. Let me try to look that up. You know, Alan, make sure I know what I'm talking about here. Uh, yeah.
What are we-
The point of that was that that you know these people usually aren't the best people. You know, like it's pretty easy judging by standards. You know, where we've increased standards since then, and to look back and be like, oh, these people kind of suck.
Yeah.
It's people, you know what I mean? So it's kind of Kind of hard to be like that.
And so he proposed the idea of the id, ego, and superego. Is and is that's
Yes.
still something that's considered like correct or valid?
Uh, yeah, like not like completely, but like some of it, yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Some it seems to like when people do like
Is it?
because it's been a few years since I like looked into him specifically. Because usually, I'll be honest, a lot of times I kind of shrug him off,
Mhm.
but especially because a lot of times when he's brought up with like more vapid stuff, like more pop psychology stuff, which isn't really
Yeah.
100%.
Huh.
But I mean, there definitely is some validity in terms of like societal, like who you're supposed to be in terms of societal and who you like a fight between like those. It's almost like the persona type thing,
Yeah.
like more of an actual fight of it.
Is there an analog between the idea of the id and the ego, between that and kind of how the brain is structured? Like I I don't know that much about neuroscience, but I believe that there's the limbic system and the cortex, which are kind of two opposing parts of the brain. Like the limbic system is more about kind of impulses and feelings, and then the cortex is more about critical thought. I could have those backwards.
Um, I don't know, because the problem is like the id is like the unconscious, and the ego is we're thinking more the id and the superego. The superego is more like like idealize like you're wanting to be versus the id that's supposed to be the primal like instinctual like you just do whatever you want to do type of thing.
Mhm.
And the ego is kind of like the your balancing act in between.
Oh, I see. I see.
But in terms of the brain, like it's hard. Like I think I mentioned this in like one of the previous episodes, but in the sense of like brain's pretty like the plasticity of the brain's pretty good in the sense of like even if you get an injury, like you can mess up. Obviously, part of like if you get an injury, that's actually how we know that certain areas of the brain do certain things. At least how we used to know back in the days, because you'd find someone who has only that part of the brain injured,
Yeah.
and you'd be able to be like, okay, well then obviously this part of the brain does this. But the brain can still kind of work with subparly, but can still kind of work with other parts of the brain to try to make up for that fact that you just lost that part.
Yeah.
Somebody knows, and especially if you're younger, you can kind of get that going better. But, I'll be like, I don't know the structures of the brain like super well, but I know that there's a lot of like there's some areas that are a lot more centralized where like they're kind of like knowledge like in one area, but a lot of it like is like it can work with multiple areas of the brain.
Mhm, mhm.
At least maybe like one aspect's here, one aspect's there, another aspect's there, and all those aspects together create that type of thing. Likewise, like you probably see a similar type of thing with like say the tongue. Obviously like certain areas of the tongue have like different taste buds.
And I think that's actually a myth. Um, the
Mhm.
idea that the tongue has regions specific to certain tastes. Uh, I
So
could
you're
be
gonna look
wrong.
it up live.
The the
I
tongue
mean, like I
map
could
you
do
learned
different
in
areas.
school is wrong on an edu site. Well, I'll do more rigorous looking into that later. I'm not going to make
I
claims one way
knew.
or the other live.
Um, I'll be honest. I don't know if it's like like I know it's not as simple as like say like a school would do it in the
Yeah.
sense of like, oh well, on the left side it's only this, and on the other on the right side, like I know it's not like that.
Mhm.
I would have thought there would have been still kind of more centralized areas
Huh.
like that. That cross what is it? Not cross pollinate because that's obviously like it's not pollinate, but like you know what I mean in the sense of like where it would multiple areas could still do like the same thing.
Yeah. Huh.
Um, yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's completely like completely off.
Well, let's go back to a less speculative topic then.
Women.
Structuralism. Structuralism. I'm gonna try to define it as a layperson based on the Wikipedia article. So it's basically the sum of all your experiences in your life is what shapes your personality.
Yeah, yeah, but then it's also trying to figure out. you're trying to figure out like the specific parts of it and like how all those parts come together. So it's not just like your whole experience, but it's also like how the um, it's basically like a sum of your parts thing, but like it focuses on the parts as well. Although there is say like it's a its sister thing, functionalism.
Mhm.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that's the one that like is like the opposite. It's actually like you got to focus on the parts.
Okay.
But let me double check on that because I know there's like
Functionalism.
two of them. I know structuralism and I know another one. Like those two specifically are at odds with each other
Let's
because
see.
there's a couple of different groups of psychological like schools of thought, a bunch of dumb thoughts.
Structural functionalism.
Should be just functionalism, but I don't know. Like that's kind of a problem you run into too. Like certain things name things different ways, which kind of annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like functionalism has a philosophical definition and a sociological definition, so that seem
But
to be different.
I wonder. I almost want to say go with the sociological one. Well, because I don't know, because that's the problem, right? Like sociology is pretty close to psychology, but then at the same time, like I don't. Sociology is kind of like yeah, it's obviously its own separate thing, and like sometimes like the definitions vary quite heavily. But I should look this up ahead of time. I didn't think we were gonna. So I wouldn't sound like an idiot.
What were we planning to talk about?
I don't know. Well, that's the problem, right? Like I didn't. Like I had the Jordan Peterson thing planned. That was about it.
uh since we're talking about the brain, I guess we could talk about this topic that we had on the backlog, which was um dolphins, pigs, elephants, like their relative
Uh,
intelligence and whether or not you would consider them conscious, I guess.
yeah, that was what time is it? Are you sure you want to get into it now? Because it's already been like
An hour and 20
an hour and
minutes.
a half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could probably
I think
wrap
it's like the
this one up.
subject that just keeps getting pushed off.
Like women.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of
Um,
women, capitalism
Jordan Peterson.
versus socialism. No.
Ooh, no, that's a fun one.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that might be a good topic for the future.
oh boy, social. I don't know.
Uh,
I've been like it's one of those things. Like it annoys me that people just look at that and it's like, oh, big scary word. Like ooh, like it's like oh boy, it's communism. You know, it's not actually the same thing.
yeah. Uh, well, my TLDR opinion on capitalism versus socialism is, I think the best system is a hybrid of the two.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
I think
and it
like
makes my blood boil when I see like, people just say stuff like capitalism bad. Like, um,
I think well I think the problem like because capitalism when it's untethered inevitably is going to lead to monopolies. You
yeah,
see that like especially in this country like you'll see that in the because the problem is right it's like oh just make another company but there's certain there's certain companies where you can't just easily the startup price is too high on it and the people have a corner like food is easy to get into
yeah.
in terms of making like whatever like clothing would be but something like say healthcare is not something like the internet not
Like the fact that mRNA vaccines have kind of been a subject of research for decades, but they're only now because of the high demand for vaccine research. Only now are they actually actualizing it and turning it into something practical that could be widely distributed. So, like this pandemic kind of accelerated mRNA research and state of the art.
right. Yeah, hopefully people will take medical research more serious. I guess at least for the next few decades. Hopefully, you know what I mean. Like now that we have a good reason to.
I hope the White House takes pandemic response more seriously.
Yeah. Well, here's the problem, right? Like we're at the point of like where the vaccines are almost done,
Yeah.
getting ready to be out. So it's like it's pretty much like I mean it's not like over, but like we're starting to get to like the end stage of it. You know,
Yeah, well,
it's like
hopefully they just bring back that playbook that George Bush and Obama worked on.
oh, God. Did you see that he Trump pardoned that dude today?
Trump pardoned who?
There's like a dude he had as like a. Let me look it up. 100%.
He'd pardon
Yeah,
himself if he could.
no,
Michael
yeah,
Flynn.
right. Michael Flynn, yeah.
Michael Flynn is not ringing a bell. Let me. Wait. Was he?
He's
Who
a
was
security advisor, dude.
retired? Trump first.
So, like he got he pled guilty twice during the Russia stuff.
Mm-hmm.
For lying to the FBI.
I see.
Then yeah, so like he's one of the people there. There's more. Like I think there was like 6 or 7 people that end up being guilty of like 40 something indictments or 30 something indictments, and
Speaking of pardons, do you think Edward Snowden is ever going to get pardoned to the
I
point
hope
where he
he
can
does.
return
Oh
to the
my
States?
god, I want him to get pardoned so bad. Like it's like come on.
I feel like he should be on the cabinet at this point, like
Well,
privacy
yeah,
and
like I
cybersecurity advice.
get the argument in the sense like he like I think it was like he didn't know anything was there.
Mm-hmm.
So like kind of giving that a free pass means that like it's kind of like whatever, you're letting people look in stuff that even if it's not there, like looking in sensitive data, I don't know, whatever, right? At the same time, it's like he found like a huge deal, like
Yeah.
on such a huge deal. It's like I don't know, give him a pass, dude, or whatever.
Oh man.
What harm? Like you already know it's there, like cat's out of the bag. So like what harm is he doing at this point? What kind of like danger is he to society at this point? Like I don't think he is. Like yeah, okay, fine, don't give him his job back or whatever. Like at least
So
pardon him. Like I don't know.
So I used to be a software engineer at a U.S. military branch. I'm going to keep it vague intentionally,
Ooh,
just
yeah,
and
Space
like
Force.
everyone, like everyone that worked there, like absolutely hated Edward Snowden and what's the Chelsea
Is what
Manning,
Julian Assange or whatever? Oh, yeah. Wait, am I
and
thinking of the wrong?
like out of contempt they would just dead name Chelsea Manning and misgender her just out of contempt because she's a whistleblower and like that's like anti-military or anti-US.
Oh, I'm thinking of the.
It was it was so frustrating how like patriotic people in the military were, but I guess it makes sense. But it's not for me.
I don't know. I think it's unpatriotic to blindly follow a system when it's like corrupt.
Yeah.
But I mean that'd be me. But, I don't know. To me, like that's always what I find a problem with the like you'll get like a lot of right leaning like the you don't you hate this country. It's like no man, like I don't know, like I'm sure some people do, like a lot of people like they love parts about this country, but it's like if you're just gonna let it go to gonna let issues go because to talk about those issues means that you're badly, like it's just a piece of land, like it's okay, it's not gonna feel bad because you
Yeah. I I
you know what I mean, like what the hell.
I think I genuinely think the United States is the best place for opportunity for like in general for people and
Yeah,
like I really want
I
this
think so.
country to succeed for that reason. Like I think this is the best place for
Right.
someone to like just go out and do something that they want to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For all the problems, like there's definitely problems, but like at the same time, yeah, I would definitely agree that this is probably
Yeah.
about as best as you can get in terms of like overall.
Yeah.
Obviously, certain areas are worse than others, but whatever.
Some
But
other
it's
random country like Serbia was the best place to for opportunity, then I'd be wanting to move to Serbia, you know.
right. Serbia doesn't exist. Don't lie to me. Who's ever actually been there?
I have.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Um
Uh,
well, I grew up in Hungary, so I've been all over Central Europe.
apparently, I have some family from Hungary. So,
Huh.
Papa?
What?
I know. That's all the time we have for this podcast. Be sure to catch us next time.
cue outro music, which I guess is the same as the intro music, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's different part. Yeah, well, same song, but different part of the.
I guess that's a good place to end it then. Everyone smash that like button, and then smash that dislike button.
Yeah. And I don't know. Hit the bell.
Next time we'll either talk about whether certain animals are people, PETA eating animals.
I want to get to that topic. It's just the problem is like there's it's like you wait a week and then more stuff happens and you think of more things and it's like you want to talk about those things like
ethics on pork versus beef versus chicken, dark jokes, drugs, capitalism versus socialism. I'm just writing these down as we talk about them.
Yeah, right. Eventually we'll get there.
Eventually we'll get there. That's our promise.
Yeah.